And shout out to everybody who responded. I think I put this up with like 6 hours time before we were recording, and we got a great response. The question was, what does Clemson have to do to redeem itself in your eyes for its earlier losses and mistakes these final 2 weeks of the regular season? Um, Before we give our thoughts, we'll read through some of the listener response. And right off the bat, Gerald J., father of Matthew, gets in and says, beat both Carolinas by multiple TDs. Hank Lee says, zero red zone turnovers. They can't undo the past, but they can certainly not repeat the same mistakes that cost them at least 2 games this year. If Clemson takes care of the little stuff and the losses to a better team and loses to a better team, then fine. But giving games away is unacceptable. Clemson Addict says win out, win at a ranked or win against a ranked UNC team, beat the rival at their place, and beat a ranked team in a decent bowl. Then use the port to get a big name wide receiver, whichever is the biggest name in the portal at wide receiver and O line, and improve the staff and quit hiring guys with no coaching experience. So,
Clemson Addict went off.
yeah, he did, and he had quite a people in his mentions discussing back and forth. Matt Diamond said beat South Carolina and win a bowl game. Frankly, Howard just beat the Cox. That's all. That Clemson burner gets in and says limit turnovers and take real inventory of the offensive staff, starting with O-line. That group has not been great for years, and how we mix and match guys up there isn't feasible for a long-term success. Offensive coaches need to be heavily scrutinized this offseason. Philosopher Phil gets in and says, I just hope they win out. Man, he threw a man in there. Hutch says, can't win out and reduce the big mistakes would help, but we are not reaching our goals, so total redemption is not feasible. I like this name here. Taco Gaming 75 says, nothing will redeem those losses in my mind until we see position coaching changes. Clemdog says, win out, and not just because the defense had to play elite. The offense needs to show huge strides of competence. I think we saw a good bit of that this week. Matthew Barish Bryant, simple, just play freaking better. I don't care about winning or losing, but all the losses, the teams just stunk. No fundamentals, no discipline, and the wins mostly. Clemson had discipline and played fundamentally sound football. That's all I want, just a good play on the field. Friend of the show, Ryan Cantor, gets in and says, beat the Cox and learn from this season and actually pivot and change some of the philosophies. The worst thing that can happen is we lose to the Cox. The second worst would be we win and think no changes are necessary because we beat a few decent teams down the stretch. And then Mark Ryan, hosts with the Fan Upstate, he says, it's been bad all season. Redemption can't happen until 2024. Matthew, I see you highlighting something here in our show notes. What you got to say about Ryan's comment?
I really like what Ryan said here. I think it's very well worded. I really like the second point he made where the second worst thing that could happen is we beat North Carolina and South Carolina. And because we got these big wins down the stretch of Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, South Carolina, we're going to think we're headed in the right direction. But there is definitely serious, I think somebody else even mentioned it, there is inventory that needs to be taken within our program. And we need a full audit this offseason, especially of the offensive side of the ball. But what I did have, before I get into my answer, I wanted to mention, you said you liked the name Taco Gaming 75. That reminded me, you've probably never played Fortnite, Drew, but Fortnite is very big right now, so maybe we'll get some extra listens by mentioning. But that's like in Fortnite, they'll like, when you can't fill out a lobby, they'll like throw in AI bots in there just like that are easy kills, but they all have names like this Taco Gaming 75, where it's like a noun, a verb, and a 2-digit number. So like when I first saw Taco Gaming 75, I just thought it was a bot.
It very well could be.
But I agree most with Hankley here. Zero red zone turnovers is the biggest thing. I think the last 2 weeks we've been 100% in the red zone, which is honestly the biggest reason why we've won the last 2 weeks. And it hasn't been like the beginning of the season where, like Duke, where we're outpacing them in every offensive statistic except for points. So I like what he said about you can't undo the past, but you can't. But you certainly can not repeat the same mistakes. I think that's a big point of emphasis for me going into these last few weeks of the season. I know it didn't go as we wanted, but I mean, when you continue to do the same things over and over again, and you can't expect different results.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big thing with redeeming this season, and you can't fully redeem it. We've saw a lot of bad football at the hands of some really talented players. I mean, you forget sometimes how talented this roster is, and just mistake after mistake that you just keep shooting yourself in the foot. I think one thing you have to do, you cannot lose to South Carolina. That I mean, as bad as they are this year, um, that washes away all of this goodwill that the Tigers have built up the last 2 weeks, and that losing 2 years in a row to South Carolina, especially the way that you lost it last year, not running the ball, turnovers, and then going to their place this year with the season they've had to win that game. I think that Clemson should, or if they win three, it'll be a great turnaround. But I'm gonna be a little more reasonable because, as we've said, we're not going to any more games this year with any expectations. So I think two of three to finish out the season, your two regular season games and your bowl game, as long as one of those wins is a win against South Carolina. Um, but a lot of people bring up a lot of valid points. I too don't want to get to the point where Clemson does finish 3-0 to wrap up the year, and we don't see the changes that we know and have seen that need to be changed around the program.
Yeah, exactly.